Genesis 2, 1 and 3, thus the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. And on the seventh day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because on it he rested from all his work which God had created in making. So if you walk into our house and look around, you don't see crosses. You don't see much in the way of religious iconography. That's because we are commandment keepers. But the signs of our faith is behavior, not stuff. Even though I do have a menorah, I've got a couple of things, decorations on my mantle, and very similar to how we have it decorated here in this room, which the congregation worked together to do. The only outward sign you'll see on me is our blue tassels, but we don't wear it to show off. We wear it to remind ourselves to keep the commandments. So the outward sign of God's people is behavior, which is why this works don't matter stuff is just for the birds, okay? Because how do you know if somebody tells you to do something, your boss tells you to show up at 8 a.m. for work every morning, you show up at 8 a.m. because you believed him, right? So your works display your faith in your boss. Your works display your faith in everything you do on earth. On earth. That's the same thing foundationally with God himself. Christianity had to adopt images because they ditched the commandments. That's creates a need. How do you identify yourself? How do you identify somebody today? If you don't eat pork and you keep the Sabbath, people think you're what? Beyond nuts. They think you're Jewish, right? Because of your behavior. But if you do everything that the rest of the world does, how do you tell a Christian apart from the rest of the world? Right? Because a person who doesn't believe in anything can be a decent person and open doors for people and show up. But if you eat the same diet, you keep the same holidays and everything. So they needed signs. They adopted fishes, they adopted crosses, both of which are pagan in origin, but they've morphed into being Christian uh, kind of symbology or iconography. Um, and we recite the Shema each week, and I hope you do so as part of your daily routine. But the commandments are our sign to God that we believe in. The day we keep holy, the diet we eat, the things we do are saying, we read your word, Lord, our God, we read your word, we believe it, we're going to do it. And that's a sign between each individual and the creator of the universe. Whether you believe him or not is whether you follow his instructions. And that's a pretty scary thing to think about because we all fall short and we all make mistakes and we all have hiccups along the way. And those things, he notices them too. So we have to be very mindful of our behavior. Um, in a Bible, in the Bible, a day is evening and morning. It is no other thing. Okay, it is how the Bible begins. Bereshit bara Elohim bara. Uh, uh, anyway, Shema Eretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and it begins in darkness. And the first thing He creates is light. So the first day begins in darkness, and light dawns from that. That's just the way it is, right? Now, it changes parlance throughout time. Sometimes we say today and we just mean the daylight. Sometimes they say this day and they just mean the daylight. But a day in the Bible is an evening and a morning, just as we were just singing from Paul Wilbur's song. Um, it's hard for us to adapt to that because of the world we live in. The little calendar date on our wristwatches or our phones is going to roll over at 23:59:59 at midnight every day. It's going to roll over into another day and the darkness. Who lives in the darkness? Satan lives in the darkness. Yahweh lives in the light. Yahweh is light. So he brings the light. So his day starts in from darkness into light, evening and morning. Okay. Our reality is that we have to live in two worlds. In fact, we could even have to live in multiple worlds if we cross timelines and deal with international people. But one day a week We all know when sundown is, don't we? One day a week, we know. And through the Bible, they had to sight the sundown, and they came up with the tradition of seeing certain stars in the night to know that it was dark enough to begin the Sabbath. But we have technology. We have our phones. Our phones tell us when sundown is, right? Our phones tell us when twilight is, and the computer does. And before that, we were using almanacs. And that's good because it's better. It's more accurate. It's not bad. We should do it that way, and we're not going to stop. When I plan out the holy days every year, I look at the internet at when is sundown on these days as to when we're going to meet and when we're going to set up and how we're going to do what we do, specifically the Passover meal, because we want to start that meal at sundown like we're supposed to do. So with the modern technology, I can go look at timeanddate.com and pull up a date, pull up Kansas City, because as you guys know, we have people from Garnett, Kansas, and then we have other people from St. Joseph. We have people from Manhattan. We know that the sunset happens at different times. So we can use geography and math to know where it's going to be at a particular location so that we can be compliant. Weeks and months are comprised of days. In the Bible, a new month is determined by the sighting of a new moon. This is represented by a single word, Kodesh. The whole doctrine is one word. Now, we being Westerners, we want to have volumes of paper as to what a new moon is or whatever. That's not Hebrew thought. The new moon and the new month have the same word in the Bible, and that's Kodesh. And it's over. There's no more words. There's no more talking, right? If you want to redefine a month some other way, you're not being compliant with the Bible. And it's represented by one single word. The doctrine is irrefutable. It's the same as the new moon for the new year is when the barley is in the Abib state in the beginning of year on month 1. The doctrine is expressed as one word, Abib. The month's name is Abib. Abib is also the budding state of barley. That is the new moon. That is the new year, the first month of the new year. There's no other way to come up with that. I know that people want to use these ancient false books of the Bible and all these other ways to come up with a new year, but it's the month Abib because it's when the moon is new after the barley is in the Abib state. And that's the end of the conversation. There's nothing else to talk about, right? Right? And now people want to get and talk. No, it's this. No, it's the vernal equinox and this and that. Those are all from paganism. Those aren't from the Bible. The Bible says, God says to Moses, this is the month Abib to you. Abib, one word, got it. And you're done. Not complicated. The sun tells us what a day is based on a perpetual cycle traced as far back as things go back. The days of the week are independent of the month. There is no way to intermingle the two things, although some people do try to do that. The days of the week are on a 7-day cycle in perpetuity from the beginning of time. So the days of the week are a perpetual cycle, and they are independent of the calendar, and they trace from creation. And we can trace that back as far as we can trace things back. However, we only need to go back to the 1st century AD to do this. We don't need to go back to the time before time, okay? We don't need to do that because we go back to the 1st century. All the documentation completely agrees, and we can prove the Sabbath because of Christianity's complete refusal to keep it. They refuse to keep the 7th day holy, so they have identified the first day, the day after the 7th day, to be their holy day. So if they were protesting some other way of calculating the Sabbath, that would carry over. But because Christianity is so adamant about keeping the first day holy, We could know the day before that is the Sabbath. We could also know that because Jewish people exist. Okay. And they keep the Sabbath. And they're not going to stop keeping the Sabbath because they believe it belongs to them. They believe it's their sign, not for all mankind. We're going to pop that bubble here in a second. And the Sabbath is what it is. And it's the Sabbath is the seventh day of the week. Now, timekeeping in the world today, I'm going to do a little history lesson about why we have such a hard time figuring this out. Because we live in a time of complete technological advancement that the ancients could never have imagined. And we're spoiled Americans. We're like, well, we don't have flying cars yet. We never stop and think and look around what we do have, right? Right. And think about how we would treat each other if we had flying cars. Okay. 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 Could you imagine getting cut off like this? Right. Right. Okay. Um, uh, the timekeeping in the world is based on the sun and set locally until the advent of railroads. And when mankind got the ability to travel more than 10 miles in a day in mass, then there was a problem because the train would show up when wherever they started their day with the train, that city has a completely different clock than the town next to it, then the town next to it, then the town next to it. Everybody is setting their time based upon the rising of the sun. 6 hours later is noon. 6 hours later, they ring the town bell. Everybody sets their pocket watches if they have it. If they don't, that's noon. So if the train is noon in one place and it's not noon in another place and they arrive at different times, they couldn't function. It was an impossible situation because nobody knew when the train was really leaving. Nobody knew when it was showing up. The telegraph was pretty new. And so a French guy came up with the idea of time zones. And that is different today because when it is 6 a.m. here in Kansas City, it's also 6 a.m. in St. Louis. But it's not. It's pretend 6 a.m. Real 6 a.m. would be based upon the sunrise in that location. Nobody advocates going back to that. That's a disaster. That's slop. We couldn't function anymore. So a Canadian came up with this time zone thing because of a catastrophe that happened with some railroads, because it's also important to know when the trains are coming and going so they do not hit each other. The tracks are kind of permanent, right? Okay. So when you start timing out trains and switching them, you have to know when they're coming and the like. And so the that was in 1870s, and then in 1888, the U.S. and Canada adopted 4 time zones, and it worked so well that the rest of the world adopted it, and now we have time zones. We don't set the clock by the rising of the sun. Today, that is so difficult for us to even comprehend because if you guys who are in the professional world and those of people who join this meeting, we have people here from California, we have people join from Canada, we have people join from Colorado. I say 1 p.m. They look at their computer and we are all completely 100% synchronized today. That is only about 15 years old. Okay. We've only had that for 15 years. The first cell phones that came out and the first computers kept time independent. So we still have computers at work that aren't connected to the internet that have error. They have to have their clock set. And if you guys are older than 40-ish, maybe 35-ish, you remember that there was a checkbox on your computer where you could say synchronize to the internet or not. If you didn't want to, you didn't have to. We don't have those checkboxes anymore, I don't think. Our first cell phones didn't even have clocks on them. It was think the second or third generation of cell phones that came out with clocks, but you could set them. They weren't even tied to the network. And then the fourth generation said, do you want to get your time from the network? I love it. I love it because that getting the time from the network is because when you land on your plane in a different time zone, you turn your phone on, it knows what time it is. It's so handy. And now it adjusts our Outlook calendar to the time zone that we're in. And we can start meetings with people on anywhere on earth. And if everybody's not there 10 seconds into the meeting, we're tapping our feet. Where is everybody? Why aren't they? 10 seconds. We are that precise. That's only 15 years old. We didn't used to be anywhere near that precise. It was, when everybody, you say you set a meeting for 1 p.m. And then if everybody's watches, your watches weren't even accurate enough to do that, right? It was, give or take 5 minutes and everybody would get together. But back to my history, you know, everybody used to set the clocks however they saw fit in each town, and there was no way to predict when the trains would arrive or then depart. The system needed to be improved upon, and the rest of the world adopted the time zone system in 1884, with Greenwich, UK, being the prime meridian. The prime meridian is longitude 0, and it runs from the North Pole to the South Pole, and it bisects Greenwich, England, and that was our starting point. And nobody cares. Today, we'll try to rename the Gulf of Mexico. Nobody is harmed by calling it the Gulf of Mexico. We know Mexico doesn't own the Gulf of Mexico, but every map has been called it the Gulf of Mexico, so who cares, right? If it was called the Gulf of Rumpelstiltskin, who cares, right? It doesn't matter. And so the line ran through England because all the maps of the majority of the maps and navigation equipment of the day were British. We were on the tail end of the British Empire. All the stuff we used was British, so it made sense for it to go through Greenwich. If it wasn't Greenwich, we probably should have used Jerusalem as 0. That should really be it. But if they hadn't used London, you know what they'd have used? Rome. They'd have used Rome, right? Or they'd have used Athens, or they'd have used something else. But it doesn't matter because these lines are imaginary. It's an imaginary grid applied to our sphere for us to have these time zones and have navigational stuff. And it's pretty cool that we have it. And now anywhere you are on one of these slices of orange, we had oranges in there. Every degree of longitude is a slice of orange. And wherever you are is the time it is. And did you even care about that before you probably don't even care about it now that I have brought it up, right? Doesn't matter. The fact that we live in Chicago time, when you scroll and you're on your internet looking to set times and stuff, your time zones, we pick Chicago. We don't live in Chicago. We live in Kansas City. And it's cool. That's not how it was from days gone by. It was a complete mess. But the seventh-day Sabbath was created at creation. We use time zones in the clock for our weekly work, but once a week, we go and say, I'm going to have it all done by sundown on Friday. Once a week, we call back to the Creator's clock, and we know when it's coming because we got our fancy technology, and it's kind of fun. Without the phones and the technology, it would be sloppy. We have trees where we live. Kansans, those are the green things that stick up out of the ground. And, we have trees in my house where you would have no idea when the sun was set because the trees are so thick in the summertime. In the wintertime, we could see it plain as day. And so France tried to deviate from this, by the way. They tried to deviate from the 7-day week. Did you guys know that? They tried to make a metric week. I do not know why Europeans are so opposed to anything other than base 10. Okay? They just want to base 10 everything, right? That doesn't work on spheres. Spheres need minutes and degrees and angles and time, and spheres are angular, right? They're not graphic. And so they went with a 10-day work week. They got rid of any religious anything on their calendar, and it lasted 12 years, and it was a complete disaster. Could you imagine a 10-day work week? I mean, yeah, they really tried to make a metric clock. I used to make a joke about that before I knew they tried it. I used to say the Europeans are over there losing sleep trying to make a 350-day year, a 300-minute day. You know what I mean? Trying to get everything to a base 10. But it just doesn't work. Base 12 just works better, right? And it doesn't even matter. So the Sabbath and the weekly cycle established at creation is actually a need for us. That was the outcome of the French experiment. They had to go back to the 7-day week. It just did not work. The people didn't like it. It was grouchy. It was a horrible situation. The Sabbath was made for mankind. It's part of our design to have a 7-day cycle. So the counterfeit has to be a 7-day cycle too. Satan knows. He knows that if he tries to switcheroo and he doesn't use base 7, that we're going to figure it out. That's what happened at the French Revolution. So they have a 7-day cycle based on the first day of the week, which from creation was not a rest day. It can't be a rest day. It was a work day because he created in the beginning. Okay. So Sabbath is for all mankind. There is no way around this. I know there's many people over the years have spent many, many words trying to convince people that it's for all mankind. But today is Chris, making it very simple for you. The KISS method is employed. Okay. The keep it simple, stupid. Genesis 1:26, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, so that they will have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds and over the sky and over the cattle and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him male and female. Most people read that as Adam the guy. It really means mankind. Same word. Adam is the guy, but it also means mankind. When we go look at the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible 200 years before Yeshua, they use the word anthropos here. Anthropos is the Greek word for mankind. It's where we get our English word anthropology, which is the study of mankind, right? So anthropos is the word there in the Hebrew, in the Greek. So Adam is both things. And Yeshua said in Mark 2:27, the Sabbath was made for man, anthropos, not man for the Sabbath. It's the end of the story. It's part of us. It is part of us like oxygen, water, food, everything is part of us is the Sabbath cycle. And you all who have adopted it, don't you kind of feel a little better now that you're working the way that you were designed to work? Doesn't this cycle actually fit better? It brings a little friction because we're not doing the things we used to do on Saturday. We do them on Sunday now, and it makes a little friction with people. But in our own homes, having this cycle, I don't know what I would do. I don't know how I wouldn't do it anymore. I would be lost without it. It's just, but it's not any type of trying to earn salvation or anything. It's just stop using that crescent wrench to bang in nails, right? You're just using the right tool for the job. You're supposed to have a 7-day rest, have a 7th-day rest, and see. I know all the people out there who are like Sunday keepers. Oh, you're trying to earn salvation. You're Judaizing. That's awful. Try it. You might like it. I think that might be what they're afraid of. They might be afraid that it actually is going to work and that they might get more out of it if they were to do such a thing. But let there be no doubt, the Sabbath applies to our race as human beings. That's what's being said right here in these very short things. God rested on the 7th day from his works. Do you think God was tired? Do you think he got tuckered out making the earth? No. He rested for our example. We are made in his image, and he rests to show us that we're supposed to be doing this thing and enjoying creation once a week. Saying we don't need to rest at all or should rest on a different day is rebellion. That's exactly what that is. It's saying, I don't need you. God, our Father in heaven, who are you to tell me I need to rest on the 7th day? That's what they're doing. And you just listen to your Father in heaven and do what he says, right? You should listen to your Father on earth and do what he says too, right? Now, you might grow up to find out your earthly dad was messed up, right? But your heavenly Father is not messed up. He created the heavens and the earth and all that are in them. And if we believe in creation, then we should believe in the Sabbath because it is a commemoration of creation. Speaking of that, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahweh your God. In it you shall not do any work. You or your son or your daughter, your male or your female slave, or your cattle, or your sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. We started today in Genesis and in history, but the Sabbath command is to remember. Does it mean remember it from this day forward in Exodus 20? Or does it mean remember it because they forgot it when they went to the land of the Mitzrayim? Either way, it works. We are not supposed to forget it. We're supposed to remember it. And people want to limit this to just those present or just the Jews, or find some way for this to not apply while still being saved. There's a lot of words out there to say you don't have to do this. You could do it our way, and in fact, some people even think we're sinning by keeping the commandments. Can you imagine such a thing? Could you imagine going to work and writing somebody up for following the rules? How would that conversation start with HR? Right? I told them not to follow the rules. They said no. So I'm writing them up for insubordination. No, it would go the other way around. You would be in trouble, right? So I'm not condemning people who don't keep the Sabbath. That's above my pay grade. But I know that I had to humble myself when I learned about this and go, that's true. I have to change. I'm not God. I don't get to determine the rest day. He gets determined the rest day. And if I'm going to follow God, I have to follow God on God's terms. Otherwise, I am saying I'm better than him. That's not the message from the Bible. No, no, no. Friday sunset to Saturday sunset is the Sabbath. It has specific instructions, and we even get the why. Because God rested on the seventh day after creation. This is supposed to remind us of creation. And society doesn't keep the Sabbath, and society has done what? The planet's an accident. We're all just a billion-year-old accident that some primordial stew crawled up out of the ocean and accidentally evolved into Mount Rushmore and the Eiffel Tower. And everything that we've ever done is just a gigantic accident, and there's no God. That's absurd. The odds of this being an accident, the odds of a planet spinning at the right rotation on the right axis with exactly the right distance between us and the sun, with a moon to actually influence that atmosphere, and an atmosphere that protects us from the bad and brings in the good. Can you imagine this happening by accident? There's just no way this happens by accident. And when they dig into our anatomy and they dig into the DNA and the sub-DNA and the subatomic particles, and they can see things working as if they've been programmed to do stuff, right? There's a creator. There's no way this is an accident. And when you accept that, well, then go the next step and do what the creator says to do. Adopt it. The Sabbath is comprehensive. Nobody does any work. No person, no animal, no slave, nada. That is unique. Rome, Egypt, Greece, they were all elitist. The United States is elitist. People are perfectly fine taking a vacation and making other people work for them. We don't do that. We have a potluck here every week. Oneg is the more proper term. And we bring our food so that nobody has to worry about anything on Shabbat. And trust me, there's enough calories here where you probably could take the weekend off. Okay? You have plenty of food and we all bring it. And that's why we do it, by the way. When I was in a Sabbath church before that didn't do this, and they would go out to eat every week, even before the sun went down, and they'd make other people work for them. And they're like, oh, well, they'll get it later. No, no, that's not how that works. The Sabbath command goes all the way down to cattle and sojourners within your gates. This is a complete lifestyle. It's a complete instruction manual for life. Everybody gets to take the same break off because they were slaves in Egypt. Everybody gets the same break because nobody's a slave. You dig? Even if people were slaves, they still got a day off. So, Leviticus 23:3, for 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day there is a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any work. It is a Sabbath to Yahweh at all your places of habitation. A holy convocation is a Mikra Kodesh. Kodesh means holy. Mikra means meeting. It's a set apart meeting. It's what we're doing now. The Bible doesn't go and tell us how to do that. We have to study the whole thing to put together the elements of a holy convocation. In other words for this are synagogue in Greek, ecclesia in Greek is a gathering. What's the kahal is another one, and shul is another one. These are all words used for getting together. You get together, you maybe have a teaching, maybe have a study, maybe not, maybe have a discussion, but you are supposed to get together every Sabbath and fellowship and worship in a holy way. The holy part is being set apart. Means not set apart like just dividing something in half and putting one over here, one over here. It means it's special time. This is special holy time for us to commune with Yahweh and his son. That's what we are doing here today. This is the commandment for that. Then Leviticus 23 calls a bunch of holy convocations, the Sabbath being the first one that we keep. And we keep the rest of them. I know the biggest Sabbath church out there only keeps the Sabbath. And then they use the same excuses of Rome to not keep the holy days. It's pretty ironic. Okay. Okay. Wish they would get over that hump and join us. So a holy meeting is required. It's not defined. So we have the Holy Spirit to guide us. We have the rest of Scripture to guide us as to what we're going to do. And it has changed throughout our time, but not too much. We kind of do the same stuff every week. Prayers, study, teaching, singing, dancing, sharing food together. I just don't see the downside. I guess the weight gain is a downside, but our getting together every week is great. We look forward to seeing each other. We look forward to being together. We look forward to sharing our trials and our good stuff and our bad stuff. We've been doing this over 25 years. My wife's been doing it almost her whole life. And why not? That's the big thing. People are afraid to do this because, in our culture, everybody wants to go, 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 go. And we're going to be open 7 days a week and we're going to make money. When I was a kid, they do treat Sunday as a false Sabbath. You couldn't buy and sell on Sunday. You couldn't do stuff on Sunday. You couldn't do financial transactions and the like. What's odd about that is the claim that the Sabbath changed with absolutely no instructions. There is no verse that says you keep the Sabbath on the first day, or you keep the first day holy from evening to evening. You keep your first day holy. You understand how much nothing there is about keeping the first day holy because they don't even specify a time, right? They wouldn't do that. Do you know why? They would have to use Hebrew time, which would lead people to this. It would lead them you would go, well, wait a minute, where did we come up with evening to evening for keeping the first day holy? Well, that's because it's from the Sabbath commandment. What do you mean? Right? I thought we were keeping the Sabbath. But for those of us who've been in Sunday church, I've never once heard anybody tell me what time of the day to start my Sunday Sabbath. Have you? No, because there's no instruction. And that's the way law works. The way law works is if if today our tax rate, our sales tax rate is 8% in Missouri, something like that, right? And if they pass a law, it says starting on such and such date, that tax rate's going to be 7.5%. Then you do your 8% until you do your 7.5%. You have a moment in time where it changes. In order for the Sabbath to change, you need a document. You need something to tell you when to stop doing one thing and start doing another. And then you need instructions on how to do it. Those instructions do exist. They're just 300 years after the apostles died. They're from the 4th century. They're from the false church, the church that wants to be holy and not holy at the same time. The Council of Laodicea in the late 300s decreed that Christians had to stop keeping the Sabbath and stop being Judaizers and stop fellowshipping with Jews, and on and on and on. I keep referencing the same document, but that's the document. And if you want to keep Sunday holy, guess what you were doing? You are treating that council like your God. If you follow their worship rules, which are contrary to the Bible, you are treating them like God. And what else are you going to dictate to them? You know? Because if they could say that the Sabbath switched to Sunday in the 1st century, they wouldn't have to say it. They would just quote chapter and verse where it happened. They don't do that because it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. The Sabbath is the Sabbath, and it will be forevermore. Oh, look, here it is, as if on cue. Isaiah 66, 22 through 23. For just as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, will endure before me, declares Yahweh, so your seed and your name will endure. And it shall be from new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all mankind will come to worship before me, says Yahweh. All mankind. Stop kicking against the goats. This is future tense because it has not happened yet. All mankind is going to keep the Sabbath in the future. Well, then that means if we had to do it in the past and we had to do it in the 1st century and we're going to do it in the future, that means now, it means there's no pause in this. And if God says this is going to happen in the future, who are you to say no, it isn't? Because people will tell me that. Oh, that's just for the Jews. Like dispensationalists, right? Oh, yeah, in the future, the Jews are going to keep the Sabbath. That is not what this says. This says all mankind right here. I believe the word is Yairach. No, that's a month word. Where do I have it? I don't have that here. But the Sabbath will be in the future. And most of us believe this to be during the 1,000-year millennial reign, right? Even though it's confusing because it says new heavens and new earth, right? But either way, this is going to happen in the future. And it is again for all mankind. You have complete continuity from Genesis 1 to the future. So what's the problem, everybody? None for us, I'm sure. So Hebrews 4, 9 through 10, properly represented, says there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For the one who has entered his rest has himself also rested from his works, as God did from his. The book of Hebrews, when people say, show me a commandment where the 1st century church kept keeping the Sabbath, and you show them this, then they go, that doesn't mean that. That's only for the Jews. They got all this shucking and jiving going on. But it says, for the people of God. Don't you want to be the people of God? I do, because I got a good idea what happens to the people who aren't. And I don't want anything to do with that. And also, we're the people of God. And praise Yahweh, we get to choose that. We have the opportunity to come to the foot of the cross. We have the opportunity to come to that torn veil. We have the opportunity to become the people of God. And we need to take that. And we need to take it seriously. And by keeping the Sabbath, first, it's such a blessing. It's so fun to get together and share with each other and have these fun tools and toys and have all this wonderful food and plot out our recipes for next week, acting like what? Like we might be the family of God, right? Like we might actually be a family and we might actually be getting along and doing what we're supposed to do and sorting things out along the way and enjoying ourselves while being his children. So if you want to be part of the people of God, you have the opportunity to do that. Or you could be the people of Rome. It's a choice. Sunday Christians want to keep that Sunday, and they got no way to justify that aside from Rome. And Rome knows it, and they're smug, and they sit back and they go, well, look, the whole world worships us anyway, right? They say it outright. So that's it. And, we are created in God's image, and this is our sign. This is our sign that we are his children, is by doing what he said to do, living the way his son lived. It's not a sign that we hold up like a Wile E. Coyote, right? I am a child of God, right? That's not what that means. It means that we do it and we're identified by our behavior. And, when you're a child and you pick something up, you go like this. Oh, that's what that does. That's a lid. You identify things by what they do. And you identify the people of God by what they do, not by the iconography. So thanks, and let's have some discussion.